A very warm welcome to Africa. Good morning. We are broadcasting the news making headlines across Africa. Today is Friday and it feels so good. This is Aina Raiza Koyo alongside Eshwin Berry.
All right, I'm feeling fantastic, and today is Grammar Day. Grammar Day was established to promote awareness and understanding of proper grammar. You know, Aina, the Shona say Chirungu chakayanengarawa chevich which means that English came on a ship.
Yes.
So some of it fell in the water. So I understand if your grammar isn't perfect, but here's a video on Grammar Day.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. Now, in our top story, 1 million refugees fled Ukraine in 1 week. Now, 1 million refugees have fled Ukraine in 1 week since Russia's invasion, the United Nations said yesterday, warning that unless the conflict ends immediately, millions more of people were likely to flee. In just 7 days, we have witnessed an exodus of 1 million refugees from Ukraine to neighboring countries, UN Refugee Chief Filippo Grandi tweeted. Unless there is an immediate end to the conflict, millions of more people are likely to be forced to flee Ukraine, Gandhi warned.
Now there's quite a bit happening in Mozambique as President Nyusi fires Prime Minister a day after sacking 6 ministers. Mozambique President Filipe Nyusi on Thursday fired the country's Prime Minister, the presidency said in a statement without disclosing more details. Carlos Agostinho do Rosario was in 2015 appointed Prime Minister after serving as the country's ambassador to Indonesia and East Timor. According to the statement, Ms. Lidia de Fatima da Graça Cardoso was also removed from the post of Deputy Minister of Health. The development comes less than 24 hours after President Nyusi fired 6 other top-ranking ministers from his cabinet. On Wednesday, he sacked the Ministers of Finance and Economy, Mineral Resources and Energy, and the Minister of Industry and Trade, Minister of Public Works, Housing and Water Resources. He also sacked Minister of Combatants and the Minister of Sea, Inland Waters and Fisheries.
In our next story, hundreds of migrants scale fence in Spain's Melillas enclave for second day. About 380 migrants on Thursday managed to climb over a higher border fence that separates the Spanish city in the northern Africa of Morocco, authorities said. The Spanish government's delegation in Melilla said 1,200 attempted to scale the 6-meter barrier that perimeters the city. On Wednesday, a record 2,500 people tried to enter the city, resulting in 491 crossing, according to local authorities. Spanish security forces activated the anti-intrusion mechanism early on Thursday to confront what the government's delegation described as extreme violence by trespassers who threw stones and used hooks and sticks at the border agents.
Truly saddening. Now in our next story, Libya crisis worsens as rival government takes oath. A standoff between 2 rival governments in Libya worsened yesterday with the risk of fighting or territorial division as the parliament in the east swore in a new administration while the incumbent in Tripoli refused to cede power. Addressing the parliament after taking the oath of office, Fatih Bashagha said he was studying all options to take over in Tripoli. The present prime minister there, Abdul Hamid al-Beiba, said he will not hand over control. Armed groups affiliated with both sides have mobilized in the capital, and foreign forces, including from Turkey and Russia, remain entrenched in Libya. Now, underlining the tense situation, Bashagha's office has accused Beiba of using force to try to stop his cabinet reaching Tobruk. Now, Beiba's government has not responded to these claims, though airline sources said domestic flights were not operating, and a statement from his defense ministry warned against any armed convoy moving without permission.
In our next story, MultiChoice cuts Russia's new channel across Africa after EU sanctions. South Africa's satellite broadcaster MultiChoice has cut Russia's RT news channel from its Pan-African DSTV service, saying on Thursday that the EU sanction had forced the move. Russia Today shall not be carried on a TV, which is DSTV platform, until further notice, and this is according to MultiChoice. Sanctions imposed on Russia by the EU has led to the global distributor ceasing to provide the broadcast feed to all suppliers. MultiChoice DSTV provides satellite TV across sub-Saharan which counts for more than 20 million paid subscribers across the continent. But its viewership is much higher as families and communities share the service. We'll be right back after this short commercial break.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, to start off the second half of our top stories, African software developers in high demand globally. The demand for African computer software developers skyrocketed in 2021 due to the global economic crisis, and of course, COVID-19 also played a role, a new Google report reveals. In the Africa Developer Ecosystem report, data was gathered from Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Algeria, Cameroon, Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Morocco, Mozambique, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tunisia. Google discovered that 38% of African developers work for at least one company based outside of the continent. Across the continent, the pool of professional developers increased by 3.8% year on year. The report shows the number of African professional developers in the workforce defied economic contractions to increase by 3.8%, or 716,000, making up 0.4% of the continent's non-agricultural workforce. Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt leads the continent in software development talent. Nigeria led the continent in rolling out talent in this field, adding an estimated 5,000 new professional developers to its pool in 2021.
At least 10 people died in a landslide at a gold mine in Guinea. At least 10 people were killed by a landslide at a gold mine in Kunsitel in the western Guinea, a local official said on Wednesday. The landslide occurred Tuesday in this mine, which has been closed but continued to be exploited, said Wednesday to AFP Mamudao Dilao, the mayor of Constel, a rural commune in the Boke region. People went to work clandestinely on the site. It was in their maneuvers that the mine collapsed. The professional toll reported 10 dead and several injured. The search is continuing. We do not know how many people were still in the mine, Dalio said.
In our next story, we are in South Africa as another report alleges corruption by former South African leader Jacob Zuma. Another report into governmental corruption in South Africa has recommended further investigations and the possible prosecution of former President Jacob Zuma. It's the third report to come from 3 years of investigations, testimonies, and cross-examination of witnesses and whistleblowers. In it, the Commission of Inquiry into Allegations of State Capture has recommended that former Cabinet Minister Nomvula Mokonyane be investigated and prosecuted for corruption. The report accuses Zuma, Mokonyane, and current ANC chairperson and energy minister Gwede Mantashe for receiving gratifications from the controversial security company Bosasa so it could maintain its grasp on state contracts. Some of the bribes came in the form of monthly payments to the Jacob Zuma Foundation and the sponsorship of Zuma's lavish birthday parties. Zuma was president of South Africa from 2009 to 2018 before he was forced to step down by his ANC party amid allegations of corruption.
In our next story, UNICEF procures 6.9 million polio doses. The United Nations Children Emergency Fund, UNICEF Malawi, has said it will procure and distribute 6.9 million polio vaccine doses to approximately 2.9 million children under the age of 5 in Malawi. UNICEF Malawi said the doses were in response to a polio outbreak announced by the Ministry of Health on the 17th of February this year. UNICEF, the World Health Organization, and other partners of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, namely Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Rotary, and Center for Disease Control and Prevention, are supporting the Ministry of Health to vaccinate all children under the age of 5 in 4 mass vaccination campaigns. According to UNICEF, the first vaccine shipment is expected to arrive in the country ahead of the first immunization campaign, which is scheduled to begin in the coming weeks.
Now, in the last of our top stories, Ukraine defense lines are holding, Zelensky says. Russia's invasion of Ukraine entered its second week on Thursday, with its main assault force halted north of the capital, Kyiv, and several cities enduring heavy Russian bombing. The humanitarian crisis also worsened, with more than 1 million refugees now having fled Ukraine, the United Nations said. Hundreds of Russian soldiers and Ukrainian civilians have been killed since President Vladimir Putin sent his troops over the border last Thursday. Russia itself has been plunged into isolation never before experienced by an economy of such size. Despite an initial battle plan that Western countries said was aimed at swiftly toppling the Kyiv government, Russia has captured only one Ukrainian city so far, the southern Dnipro River port of Kherson, which its tanks entered on Wednesday. Now, Russia has shifted tactics, escalating its bombardment of major cities. Swathes of central Kharkiv, a city of 1.5 million people, have been blasted into rubble. Mariupol, the main port of eastern Ukraine, has been surrounded under heavy bombardment with no water or power. Officials say they cannot evacuate the wounded. The city council compared the situation to the World War II siege of Leningrad. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. This is still Africa. Good morning. After the break, we'll be looking at the Southern African Customs Union, which has for more than 100 years played an important role to promote trade and development within member states. Stay with us. Now, as I just highlighted, the Southern African Customs Union, SACU, has for more than 100 years played an important role to promote trade and development within member states. Now, Executive Secretary of SACU, Paulina Mbala Elago, joined us on Africa Good Morning in the studio to talk about this and other matters. She had a conversation with Aina. Let's have a look.
Welcome back to your #1 source of decentralized African news. Now, the Southern African Customs Union, SACU, has for more than 100 years played an important role to promote trade and development within member states. We are proud to welcome the Executive Secretary of SACU, Ms. Paulina Mbala Elago, to Africa Good Morning. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's get into it. The African Continental Free Trade contains lofty deals about integration of the entire continent. How far has SACU progressed with the implementations of the measures required for this purpose?
Okay, that is a very important question, and in fact the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AFCFTA in short, is a milestone for the African continent. It has obviously created, it has been established to create a market of over 1.9 billion, and that is the largest market even in the world, I think, but a market that will allow Africa to trade freely amongst ourselves and to remove barriers to trade. And I believe it is something that is important for Africa in the first place. But for SACU specifically, we prioritize the African Continental Free Trade Area because it gives us an opportunity to enhance our trade and also open up export opportunities for traders and producers of goods that can be traded or sold within the wider African continent.
All right, let's talk about industrialization. What is SACU doing in that area for its member states?
Well, SACU has most recently agreed to refocus its work agenda, and industrialization has always been an overarching objective, but now we are looking to position ourselves vis-a-vis the Continental Free Trade Area, which is why it is so important for us, and not only for the continent. And we are looking to position ourselves so that we become a hub to produce goods that can be exported into the continent. We have identified or agreed to prioritize a number of sectors, agro-processing being one of them, and there we are looking at leather and leather products, meat and meat products, fruits and vegetables, textiles and clothing, pharmaceuticals, essential oils, as well as cosmetics. And these are sectors where obviously as a sub-region, I believe we have comparative advantage, but also sectors where we can actually also open up the market for women and youth in particular, but really just looking to position ourselves, enhance our industrialization capacity, but also take full advantage of this market that has been that is being opened up through the Continental Free Trade Area.
All right, speaking about opening up the market, it is everyone's dream for the industry to open up. Well, I understand that SACU has a trade facilitation program. Please tell us more about that.
Again, that is linked. I must say the way we have structured our priority sectors is such that we have the African Continental Free Trade Area that we want to take advantage of, but we must produce so that we are able to take advantage of that market. And finally, we must also make sure that the environment for trade is actually enhancing and facilitating that. And we are doing that through the removal of barriers, modernization of our customs systems, but also really looking at how can we enhance the environment by reducing the cost of trade, by facilitating the systems through modernization, looking at specifically automation of our systems and adoption of modern technologies to ensure that we are able to facilitate the movement of goods across the region and beyond.
All right. Now, how has SACU's common revenue pool benefited member states that were impacted by COVID-19? Obviously, everyone was impacted, but maybe if you can just elaborate more on that.
Well, I mean, the SACU revenue pool, common revenue pool, is obviously one important element of this SACU agreement. But it is important in the sense that member states draw their revenues from there. I mean, for the smaller economies, Botswana, Lesotho, Eswatini, and Namibia, their shares from the common revenue pool as a share of government revenue ranges from 25% to 40%, which is quite significant. For South Africa, it's about 3%. Now, with COVID, especially at the height of COVID-19, where you had supply chains disrupted in the movement of goods, we have also experienced a significant decline in the revenue shares, about 25%, which is quite significant. You're talking about 35 billion rand or Namibian dollars. And so that has greatly affected the shares of member states, revenue shares of member states. And of course also in the following year, we've seen a decline still. So we're really hoping that with the economies picking up and certainly global trade also picking up, we would hopefully see an improvement, but that will not come naturally because clearly the economies have been affected greatly, and which is why we are looking at industrialization as a way of enhancing production to also contribute to efforts of rebuilding the economies post-COVID-19, because now countries are obviously looking at recovery efforts, economic recovery efforts. And so industrialization can play a part in that, but of course we need to make sure that transport and logistics are also set up for producers and to export or to produce and export their goods to larger markets. So I believe that the integrated approach of our strategy allow us really to look at key issues that will contribute greatly to also efforts of economic developments in member states.
All right. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Like anything on your work and the work of SACCOs as your final word?
Yes, absolutely. I always have something to say. I will take advantage of that. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think organizations such as our SACCO play a very important role. Regional integration is critical for smaller economies such as Namibia, because often countries are looking at the limited markets defined by the size of their population. But for us, we are looking at a bigger market. First of all, SACCO market is bigger. Of course, it expands the Namibian market completely. But also, as we are now negotiating as a region to take advantage of the Continental Free Trade Agreement or area, it also opens up that scope. SACCO has negotiated trade agreements with other partners, with the UK, with the European Union, and so those markets are there. But obviously also what is important is that private sector and producers of goods should take advantage of those markets. And we would want to see the Continental Free Trade Area, for example, really benefiting Africans and our citizens in the region, and more specifically also women and youth, because these are also the sectors of the population that are highly affected. And so we want to see them also really venturing into these new markets that are being opened up and taking advantage of that. But finally also, as a customs union, we are obviously working very hard to make sure that we negotiate a deal that can benefit our producers and suppliers of goods. And so we are hoping therefore, with the Continental Free Trade Area, but also regional integration in general, and the programs that we are working on in terms of trade facilitation to improve the markets, the trading environment, those will really turn into tangible benefits for our citizens, because ultimately it's the men and women on the street that has to benefit from this.
All right, thank you very much, Me Paulina Mbala Elago, for coming to Africa Good Morning and disseminating that information, and also for your valuable contributions to our society.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, this is Africa Good Morning. More after the break.
Swiping or tapping your FNB Visa card is the safest, easiest, most rewarding way to transact. Because if you swipe your FNB Visa debit or credit card 3 times a month, you'll automatically be entered into the draw to win your share of a mammoth 250,000 Namibian dollars. Competition ends 15 February 2022. T's, C's and rules apply. Switch to FNB, Bank of the Changeables.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. In our next segment, the residents of Araub this week expressed the urgent need for land to help accelerate development at a rural settlement. It all looks promising after village councillors had a positive meeting this past Sunday, where land was identified and a decision taken to start with the paperwork. Monique Adams in our Cape Schwab office visited the settlement and compiled this report.
I am Yani Frederik Siops. I am from the Araub Concern Group. We started early December last year to start a group where we bring the urgency of getting land to start an informal settlement for housing because the need of housing became such a huge problem in Aruap that people started squatting behind the social houses that was built in 2010 by the village councillors. There are several homes where 30 people stay in a one-bedroom house. That is why we wrote a letter to the council to give us land or identify land for us to build our homes on. But they as a council could not do it, and as a community we took matters in our own hands and went out and identified land, virgin land, and we followed the processes. The council stood against it but could not give reasons why they are against our needs. We did not stop and went further by sending out written letters and sat around the table to come with an agreement and suggestions. We gave names of 180 names of people that signed the petition of wanting land to call it their own and build their homes. After that, we had 2 to 3 meetings, and the council still could not give us an answer as to why they cannot provide us with land. Today, after their meeting, they came with good news where the council have come to an agreement of giving us land that they have identified. The meeting took place on the 20th of February, and now in the meantime they will prepare it, and they have seen the urgency and will not waste any time and work on it immediately. With that being said, I am grateful as the chairman of the Concerned Committee Group of Aruap that the council has realized the housing needs of the people of Aruap. This time around, I just hope that they really do show and give action and not words. So I'm really grateful that things are getting into motion, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year.
Hulle het vandaag een vergadering gehad waarop die council vir ons gesê het hulle het 'n voorstel, hulle het 'n grond wat hulle vir ons aan ons wil beskikbaar stel. Die council het vandag 'n meeting gehad die 21ste waarop hulle met 'n voorstel van grond wat hulle beskikbaar kan stel en waarop wat hulle gaan voorberei vir die informal resettlement. En hulle gaan dit voorberei en dan sal hulle het ook die dringendheid daarvan gesien en gesê hulle gaan dit nog hulle gaan daarin werk. Hulle het nie tyd gebond maar hulle het gesê hulle gaan daarin werk om vir ons grond beskikbaar te stel. En daarvoor is ek besonder dankbaar en bly dat hulle ook ingesien het vir die behuisingsnood waarin ons in Aruap gemeenskap sit.
I don't want to talk too much or say too much, but at this point, I don't know if these houses are ours or it belongs to the council, because these houses were built in 2010. Currently, all we need as the community, we want land that we can call our own, land that we can build our own homes on, and that is what I am crying out to the village council and everyone on the council to give us land, because at this point the Aruap people are just looking for land to build our own homes.
Ons soek grond, mama. Ons eie huis om ons eie huise te bou.
I am Gerkie Witboy, Ketmanswa Rural Council, and the Council of Aruap and myself, we had a meeting on the 20th of February, and the meeting was a very positive meeting after months of not coming to common grounds. I am glad to announce that we have identified land, and it is the land that I'm currently standing on for the people of Arawak to build their homes, and that will be an informal settlement here in Arawak. I am glad that we have all come to an agreement, and I am looking forward to working together with the community and the councillors and our governor in order to finance also this project, because at the end of the day, financing is always a strain when you want to start a project. But I am glad that we have identified land. Now what's only left is for us to start the paperwork and the construction and start the infrastructure of the project. So I'm really looking forward to it, and yes, I am happy with the positive outcomes of our meeting.
Dan zal dat ook werken. So nogmaals baie dankie aan die plaaslike raad, aan die gemeenskap en aan die komitee wat so moes hard onverpoos werk. Daar was ook kopstampe, maar een leier moet kan compromise om aan die einde van die dag een succes en een inkomst te bereiken. Baie dankie.
Many thanks to Monique Adams for that comprehensive report. Now, an Oxford Namibian PhD holder just released a new book. We'll be talking about that after the weather. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, Njodi Ndeuyema, an Oxford PhD holder in collaboration with UNAM, hosted the book launch of his book titled Reinvigorating Ubuntu Through Water, a Human Right to Water under the Namibian Constitution in Ongwediva on Tuesday. Now, this book argues for the existence of a court-enforceable human right to water that is implied from the right to life, Article 6 of the Namibian Constitution. The book builds this argument by using tools of constitutional interpretation with the aid of comparative materials. Have a look.
The good doctor was being introduced. We heard that in the space of 11 years, he managed to get 2 law degrees from UNAM, which is a big jurist and an LLB from UNAM. So in a total of 5 years. And then he did 3 postgraduate degrees, like 3 master's degrees, and a PhD within that time. Now, for most of us academics and learners or students who are aspiring to be out there in the academic world, would probably want to ask, how did this guy do it? I mean, does this guy have a social life? What is happening? How can he, can he try to explain to us?
Every African, possibly globally to everyone, within the confines of the law,
by strengthening the principles of Ubuntu. So I'll explain to you and elaborate more on his academic journey so that you may understand why he's here today with us. And I would encourage that we engage with him and ask him as many questions as possible so that he elaborates on what the book is about and the principles explained within it. Dr. Jyoti Ndonyema was a modern law review early career research fellow at University of Oxford from the year 2020 to 2021. He completed his Doctor of Philosophy in Law, awarded without corrections. I think he deserves a round of applause for that. At Linacre College, University of Oxford, and his thesis was also awarded the Suberdi Prize, I hope I mentioned it right, and that's for the best thesis in law for that particular year. Where at Oxford he also obtained a Masters of Philosophy in Law Research, a Bachelor of Civil Law, BCL, and a Masters of Science in Criminology and Criminal Justice. And this was at the same time while studying as a Rhodes Scholar. His undergraduate PhD and LLB degrees were obtained from the University of Bolivia, and he's certainly a testament that we produce quality journalism. And for anyone who has doubts of the products that we are sending out into the world, I think this is testament that we can definitely produce people who can compete at the best level globally. From 2017 to 2021, he was also a research director at the Oxford Human Rights Hub and the founding editor of the University of Oxford Human Rights Hub Journal, as well as an editor of the Oxford University Commonwealth Law Journal from 2016 to 2019. His scholarship has been published in leading journals, including the Journal of African Law, Michigan.
This is Still Africa. Good morning. Let's get into your economic news. We start off in Mozambique. Prime rate stays at 18.6% for 6th consecutive month. The reference interest rate for credit operations in Mozambique will remain at 18.6% in March for the 6th consecutive month, the Mozambican Association of Banks announced on Wednesday. The rate calculated by AMB and the Bank of Mozambique is based on a single index of 13.3% calculated by the central bank that remains unchanged, and a cost premium that also remains at 5.3%. The 18.6% prime rate was fixed on October 1 after a decrease of 30 basis points in relation to September. Its creation was agreed between the central bank and the AMB in June 2017 to eliminate the proliferation of reference rates on the cost of money. At the time, it was launched at 27.75% and has fallen 915 basis points since then.
In our next story, Kwacha remains under pressure. Local persists on the local currency, the Kwacha, evidenced by continued chaos of grip against other major trading currencies and an ever-ending widening spread of rates on parallel market and unauthorized dealer banks. Our sports check show that a black market, the Kwacha was trading at 1,140 compared to 824 kwachas in ADBs, creating a spread of 316 kwachas on one of the highest margins in the recent past. This comes after a time demand for forex remains elevated in the country while supplies continue to shrink. In January, for instance, official foreign exchange reserves were recorded at 399.98 million, representing 1.60 a month for imports, slightly below 1.72 months in December last year and way below 2.41 months the same period last year.
All right, we swing over to Kenya as Dar es Salaam and Nairobi City Lodge hotels up for sale. City Lodge Hotel Group has announced plans to sell its Tanzanian entity City Lodge Hotel in Dar es Salaam and 3 Kenyan hotels in plans to exit East Africa after barely 7 years of operation. According to Business Daily, South African company that owns Nairobi's Fairview Hotel, Town Lodge and City Lodge 2 Rivers have finally received regulatory approvals to sell the 3 hotels to Actis for 20 billion shilling. City Lodge Dar es Salaam was not available for comment after several phone calls went unanswered. Now, City Lodge Hotel revealed that it received the green light from the Competition Authority of Kenya in January. City Lodge Hotel in Dar es Salaam has 148 rooms, whereas Fairview Hotels has 127 rooms. City Lodge Hotel at 2 Rivers has 171 rooms, and Town Lodge Upper Hill 84 rooms, all in Nairobi. The deal involves a joint bid between Actis and a private company registered in the British Virgin Islands called Jamison Valley Holdings.
In our next story, FNB West Bank is ready to open lending tabs again, but this time around only to low-risk clients. First Rand says its retail businesses, FNB and West Bank, are ready to start lending more again. In 2020, the group decided to adopt what it calls a discerning credit origination approach. As a result, FNB and West Bank have been lending more to low-risk customers and moving away from those who appear too stretched to afford repayments. The banking group said while this did cost it some net interest income, it believes this approach has helped it capture a higher market share of better quality and lower risk clients. We have been mindful that as we transition out of this pandemic, our customer incomes are recovering where we think the pockets of acceptable credit risk lie, said First Rank Group CEO Allen.
All right, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Now, just before we get the sports from Ari, let's have a look at the economic indicators. Now, one particularly unfavorable intersection is the intersection that happens sometimes between politics and sport. And looking at the situation in Russia, we're seeing a lot of things shifting on the global space, especially in football, looking at the Chelsea club being sold just this last week. Of course, this is not all that encompasses the sports news package. Ari has got everything you need to know right now.
Good day everyone, it's time for international sport news and we start off with Formula One racing. And news is that the Russian drivers have been banned by Motorsport United Kingdom to drive in the United Kingdom in the Grand Prix circuit this year, and that relates to the British Grand Prix that's going to take place in Silverstone, that is July of this year. And it also relates to the Russian driver that is driving for the Haas team. It's Nikita Mazepin. Earlier he was given the authority or the okay by FIA that he can drive in all the Grand Prix but under a neutral flag. But the Motorsport United Kingdom indicated they're not going to accept his license. Still uncertain if other countries will follow suit to the decision of Motorsport United Kingdom. Other motor racing news is that Max Verstappen is set to earn a lot of money in a new contract deal that is for Red Bull, that try to keep him as their driver. Of course, Max Verstappen won the 2021 season in dramatic style. He's the new champion, and it is reported that he might earn as much as €50 million for a new contract that is annually. Now we continue with some tennis news, and there was a very difficult situation for the number 1 seed in the Monterrey Women's Open, and that the number 1 seed is Elina Svitolina. She is from the Ukraine, and the reason that it was a difficult situation was because she was drawn in the first round to play against a Russian opponent in Anastasia Potapova. Potapova was allowed to play under a neutral flag in the tournament. In the end, it was Elina Svitolina that went on to play the match. She initially said that she will refuse to play the match, but she did continue to play the match, and she won it quite easily 6-2 and 6-1 to advance to the next round. Also from the same tournament, the number 2 seed is Leila Fernandez, and she's from Canada, and she had a tough 3-set game, and she had to beat the China's Qinwen Zheng, and she beat her by 7-6 in the 3rd set. And now we continue with some cricket news, and it's almost time for the World Cup, the 50-over World Cup, Women's World Cup, that's played in New Zealand. It starts in a few days' time, and the first game for South Africa will be on Friday, and that is South African time, and that is actually midnight on Saturday, or just on midnight Friday evening. They will play Bangladesh in the first game of the tournament, and the opening game earlier will be New Zealand that will play against the West Indies. Tough situation for South Africa at the moment because they also without their star batter, that is Lizelle Lee. She's back in New Zealand. She couldn't fly with the team initially, and now she's in quarantine because of COVID-19 for 7 days, but she will be able to play in the second game against Pakistan. Earlier, a few months ago, or a month ago, it was also bad news that the captain of the South African team, that was Danae van Niekerk, she broke her ankle, and she's out of the tournament altogether. South Africa will be captained by Sunay Luce. And now to conclude some soccer news or some football news, there was some midweek FA Cup games that was played in the United Kingdom, and some of the big teams that did go through was Chelsea. They had a tough game against Luton. They beat them, that was played at Luton, they beat them by 3-2. That was also a tough game for Chelsea. It was announced on that day that the club is going to be sold, and it is the owner of Chelsea, that is Roman Abramovich, that announced that he will sell the club after almost 20 years. He bought the club in 2003, but now he said that he's going to sell it, and it's obviously linked to the situation where Russia invaded the Ukraine. There's estimations that the club might be worth as much as €3 billion. And also other FA Cup results from midweek, or that I can mention, is Liverpool that went through against Norwich. They beat them at home by 2-1. And then also Middlesbrough that earlier continued to be going on and beating big clubs. They first beat Manchester United, and now in the round of 16 they also beat Tottenham Hotspur by 1-0. And with that soccer news, I conclude the international sporting news. Hope you have a great day. We talk again tomorrow. Goodbye.
Have you received a loan from NSFAF? NSFAF loan is the same as any other loan. It must be paid and settled. NSFAF has a set of guidelines on how you can repay your loan and become debt-free. Therefore, it is important that you, a former beneficiary and a responsible Namibian, show your patriotism by helping pay back your loan and thus helping NSFAF become a revolving fund for the benefit of future potential students. By failing to pay back your NSFAF loan, you risk being blacklisted or having a court order against you. So arrange with the fund to pay back your loan today. For more information on how you can repay your loan, visit our website at www.nasfaf.na or visit our Facebook page or Twitter. Do the right thing and hashtag #paybackthemoney.
Every weekday from 7 a.m., Africa Good Morning brings you the pertinent stories on the African continent and the stories from around the globe. Let's have a look at today's highlights. 1 million refugees fled Ukraine in a week, UNHCR. Mozambique President Nyusi fires Prime Minister a day after sacking 6 ministers. Hundreds of migrants scale fence in Spain's Melilla enclave for second day. Libya crisis worsens as rival government takes oath. MultiChoice cuts Russian news channel across Africa after EU sanctions. Mozambique prime rate stays at 18.6% for 6th consecutive month. Those have been our stories.
We thank you very much for joining us on this Friday edition of Africa Good Morning. Please do visit our website. It's called OneUp2, and there you can catch all the content that you need to see. On that note, is all our love, all our light. Stay safe and enjoy your weekend.
See you Monday.